Hello and welcome to CIBER Focus, your source for international business information. My name is Tim Smith and our guest today is Dr. Richard Seymour. Dr. Seymour has over 25 years experience in academia, corporate advice, entrepreneurial ventures, and NGOs in Australia, Asia, and the UK. At the University of Sydney, he's responsible for entrepreneurship and innovation units of study at the business school. He is co-director of the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Research Group and is director of major initiatives such as Remote and Rural Enterprise, Developing Entrepreneurial Women in Asia, and the Genesis Program. His work outside the university focuses on developing and supporting the next generation of entrepreneurs globally. In particular, he is a founding director of EDNA, the Entrepreneurship Development Network Asia, which includes major education programs in Myanmar, Vietnam, and Indonesia. In this episode, Dr. Seymour will draw from his many years of working in entrepreneurship development in Southeast Asia, particularly in Myanmar, to share with us the state of entrepreneurship in one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Richard, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure, thank you.
So to begin with, can you share with us the current business environment in Myanmar and what role entrepreneurship plays?
Well, in Myanmar, they've come out of a long period of almost international hibernation, where with sanctions and with military rule, they haven't really had a chance to engage much beyond the region. So it's a very exciting time in Myanmar, and there's very high expectations about changing, I guess, some of the challenges of the country. So entrepreneurship plays a huge role, whether that's commercial entrepreneurship where it's a for-profit venture, or whether it's a social enterprise where there's a kind of a purpose-driven enterprise. So it's a very exciting time to be there, and some of the programs and some of the businesses we see growing is really quite eye-opening.
Great, appreciate it, thanks. What are the most prominent challenges facing the new enterprises in Myanmar, and what would you say they need to develop in order to be successful?
I think a lot of the challenges are to do with resources and capabilities. People is a challenge in terms of having good employees, good capable workers. So I would say probably the biggest challenge facing companies is to do with resources, finances, people. In saying that though, these businesses and entrepreneurs are incredibly resourceful in terms of how they bootstrap with minimal resources, how they can make do with what they have. So again, I think some of these challenges will very quickly become some of their greatest strengths.
Sort of a need-based entrepreneurship approach, would you say?
In many ways. And I think when we talk about entrepreneurship, we're often looking for something that looks like entrepreneurship in our country. And yet when we open our eyes, we see a lot of incredibly entrepreneurial people, building things from, as I said, minimal resources. So I think that's a challenge. And then also supply chain, so actually strengthening the businesses all the way to export, all the way to a stronger final product. I think those aspects, once they're strengthened, will be very promising for the country.
Great, thank you. So much of your work has focused specifically on women entrepreneurs in Myanmar and in Asia as well. Share a little bit more about how women are growing as entrepreneurs specifically in Myanmar.
Well, I think in a lot of these Asian countries, women usually are managing resources of the household, they might be managing finances. So a lot of the time, again, they take a very backseat role. Maybe they're running the enterprise, but the husband is the face of the business. So we've realized that if we work with, we work with 80% women in terms of our entrepreneurs, in terms of our staff and the mentors we work with. And we find that those women, stereotypically, obviously, are very good at collaborating, they're very good at asking questions and admitting where they don't know answers to things. So I find if we say there's a rule, often these young women who are growing ventures are an ideal space to start growing their capabilities.
Thanks. Also, when I looked at the information about EDNA and the number of individuals you've been able to reach, Richard, help me better understand the alumni from the EDNA training and programs. How are they able to be continually inspired, and how are they engaged through your programming?
Yeah, well, probably similar to here. We've found that if you can't see it, you can't become it. So if you don't have an entrepreneur in your family or a close family friend, it's very unusual for someone to be or become an entrepreneur. So what we have done with this program, and the local team in Myanmar has now put through almost its 10,000th graduate in 3 years.
Fantastic.
Which is quite extraordinary. And these people do roughly a 6-month program, and in that program they're developing their skills, their understanding of business concepts, but they're also understanding how they can try their business ideas, how they can refine ideas. So in a way, we're not pushing content down these entrepreneurs. We're teaching them ways of thinking and ways of I guess, engaging with their colleagues. Because if you can ask the right question to the right person and you can act on that information, you can pretty much learn anything. So the program has focused very much on building those capabilities, building the confidence of people to be able to ask those questions, and then providing the networks so that they can then engage their business in the local entrepreneurial community. Because again, if we come from the outside, we might say, oh, there's nothing here. But actually, when you look a bit deeper, there's incredibly strong social networks, incredibly strong bonds of support. And again, coming back to the way those women often work together, they collaborate and support each other. So the alumni, as you say, very much is about this communities of practice that we hope to develop.
That is fantastic. As I said, I am excited that you have helped to create a culture there of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And that is exciting.
Yeah, well, I think in many ways the culture of entrepreneurship there has impacted me. Because again, what we might think as entrepreneurial, we get hung up on, the Silicon Valley model, where it's very much a for-profit enterprise, rapidly growing global, born global kind of initiative. Whereas in some of these Asian areas, and also in remote parts of Australia, there's very much that aspect of, well, I'm building an enterprise here with my family or with my community. And it's a much more social kind of venture without kind of putting too fine I don't want to overemphasize the social aspect, but a lot of these businesses really are purpose-driven, where they're as interested in the way the business operates as what the business creates. And that's, for me, been really a positive thing to learn from.
Yeah, thank you. So a follow-up, when you talk about social enterprise then in Myanmar, as opposed to maybe other countries on the global stage, how would you better define that or define it for us?
Good question. Everyone debates what is entrepreneurship, what is an entrepreneur. The way I look at it, entrepreneurship is all about trying to create value. So this goal of creating value from new products, new markets, or new processes. And I guess the big difference with social enterprise is that the value that's created is not just a monetary or pecuniary value. There is the social bonds, there may be a social problem, there could be environmental. So in some ways what the social venture does is it prioritizes other types of value. The other big difference is that the commercial venture really is focused on the ends. So what happens at the P&L, what happens at the balance sheet at the end of the year. Whereas a social enterprise is looking about more, how do we share these resources? How do we share this value that we're creating? So in some ways, the entrepreneurial venture that's commercial captures value, and the social enterprise shares that value.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard, so much, and thank you for coming in to speak with us today. It's been a pleasure.
Wonderful. Thanks for the invitation.
Safe travels home.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's it for this edition of CIBER Focus. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any comments or suggestions for future topics, please let us know at CIBER, that's CIBER, at indiana.edu.